Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Of course, when it comes to actually playing Warzone, we've had a couple different options for a little while now. That, of course, being normal Verdansk or Verdansk, if you want to say it fancy, and then also Rebirth Island. And Rebirth Island, especially as of lately, has, I feel like, really risen in popularity. I feel like a lot more players are playing on Rebirth now than when it first launched. It first dropped. Players were sort of, is this really that much better than Verdansk? Am I really a big fan of how Resurgence plays and whatnot? But now, though, I see a lot of people on Rebirth day in and day out. So today, we are breaking down the top 5 best loadouts to use on Rebirth Island. So if you enjoy the video, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new here, or if you haven't already subscribed, I'm always covering everything going on in COD. News, intel, updates, loadouts. It's all right here. So feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date. All right, so the first loadout we're looking at is a combination of the FARA 83 and the MAC 10. As we know, the FARA, especially here in Season 4, is extremely good. It's a great medium and long-range rifle, and it can be used more aggressively like on Rebirth Island, where a lot of your engagements are a bit closer than they would be on Verdansk. You don't have a ton of ranged engagements on Rebirth. Normally things are a lot more compact, and in turn, a lot of the setups and a lot of the weapons that you see used on Rebirth are a bit different than over on Verdansk. But the FARA overall, I mean, this thing is a ton of fun to use. It is laser accurate in every single sense, extremely reliable when it comes to control. Its damage is fantastic. Its range, as much as you really need it on Rebirth, is going to be great. So all around, one of the better rifle choices. And here we're using just the base regular suppressor. Honestly, you don't need the extended range and the extended velocity that the GRU offers. The regular suppressor and that added mobility is going to be crucial and honestly key on Rebirth. You can also go ahead, you can run the Liberator barrel here, or you can go for the RPK barrel. Either or is going to work really well. Just with the Liberator, you're going to be playing a bit more aggressive because you don't have the mobility slowdown that the RPK has. Of course, it hurts your aim walking movement speed, it hurts your ADS speed, your sprinting move speed. So if you're playing a little slower with the FARA and you have like the MAC 10 out a lot more, perhaps the RPK will actually better suit you there, and also you get that extra range and velocity on there. Or Liberator, you just get that extra velocity. It's going to work out well too, and of course you get the vertical recoil control help as well. Then I've got the Tiger Team Spotlight. I use this on a lot of my weapons just because I do like that mobility boost. I've also got the 3x scope on there. You don't always have to run a scope on Rebirth just because those engagements are a lot closer a lot of the time. So if you don't want to use a scope, I'd recommend probably switching to the skeletal stock, or maybe even something like the serpent wrap and get some better ADS time out of that. But then finally, I also use the 60 round mag on there as well. Then when it comes to the MAC 10, pretty much the same deal that we've been seeing for the past couple of seasons. This thing is a very reliable SMG. Also incredibly aggressive, very fast. Like the mobility on this thing, I love it. It's so good. The recoil, pretty easy to control. The damage output and the TTK are both very competitive for an SMG in the current meta, so you can't really go wrong with the MAC 10. However, as we go through all the other setups today, you could definitely swap out the secondaries on them or even the primaries and use different combinations like that. But of course, for the MAC 10, we've got the basic sound suppressor for the added mobility and of course to keep us off the radar. We also have the Task Force barrel, the Tiger Team Spotlight for better mobility, the 53 round drum, and then also the Raider stock for better mobility as well. This is, as we know, is like the standard go-to Cold War SMG setup, and it's not changing for Rebirth. Now for perks and equipment, it's pretty much what I would run on Verdansk as is. Thermites and stuns are super crucial. The first perk is really the only thing that I would contemplate changing. EOD might be a bit more effective on Rebirth because players are constantly dropping back in on top of you, and double time isn't always the most essential just because the map's not as big as Verdansk. You're not moving around as much, so having that increased movement speed isn't always super essential. EOD though could actually be really beneficial on Rebirth specifically. Of course, as always on the first loadout, we are using Overkill. We switched to Restock with that second one to replenish our nades. Then Amped is, of course, is like the basic go-to perk 3 on everything. Now the second loadout is a very fun one. We've got the Ram 7 specifically built for Rebirth and the nail gun. I mean, it's just a fun secondary, and it really shines on Rebirth where you are up close and personal in so many other engagements. On Verdansk, you just can't really use the nail gun all that much. It doesn't have the range. It's not going to be effective where other SMGs would be on Verdansk, so it's not as reliable there. But on Rebirth, you can get away with using this thing, and it is a ton of fun. It's just sort of that extra step. If you're able to squad wipe with a nail gun, if you're able to pull off a little finesse with a nail gun, that enemy team, you're gonna be living rent free in their head for sure. But for the attachments, first up on the Ram 7, like I said, this is built specifically for Rebirth, so it's a bit more aggressive compared to what we'd be using on Verdansk. Here we've got the monolithic suppressor yet again. We actually go ahead and use the Eclipse barrel instead of the Ranger because we don't need the the movement speed reduction. Of course, the ranged fights aren't as aggressive and aren't as extreme as they would be on Verdansk, so Eclipse works just fine here. We've got the tac laser instead of an optic because you don't really need the T-pose or the VLK 3 times on Rebirth to be super accurate because of the closer range fights. We've also got the commando foregrip and the 50 round mags. And of course, on the nail gun, you can't add any attachments. It's just straight up a basic gun, no upgrades whatsoever. You just use it, have fun with it. It actually works pretty well. Then loadout number 3 is all about Modern Warfare. We've got the AMAX, we've got the Modern Warfare MP5. The AMAX, despite the nerf, is still very reliable. You can use this as a pretty solid assault rifle in the meta still. This setup is more so based off of wanting to play a bit more medium to long range with the AMAX, but then having that Modern Warfare MP5 for all those close range fights. So if you're playing around the outskirts of Rebirth, you know you want to have that AMAX out there for those ranged fights. You move into like the central block area or any close range area, you got the Modern Warfare MP5 to keep you covered up close. When it comes to the AMAX, again, we're focused more on mobility than we are like ranged control. So we got the monolithic suppressor, we've got the Zodiac barrel, the standard setup there. We've got the tac laser, no commando foregrip. We don't want that slowdown, and honestly, you don't really need it. That tac laser increase with the ADS and then also with the stability is actually really nice. It can help out if you do have to play with this up close. If you get into a sticky situation where, hey, you get pushed by a guy you didn't know was there and you have the AMAX out, you stand a better chance with the tac laser out, in my opinion, than you do with the commando foregrip because you do have better speed. We've also got the VLK 3 times on here because you don't really want to be using an iron sight AMAX most of the time. It's like not the most optimal. You could definitely try it, maybe swap that out for like the stipple grip tape or even sleight of hand, but I feel like the VLK 3 times works fine for what it is, especially on the AMAX, which is more ranged, like I said. Then finally, we've got the 45 round mag on there as well. And then for the Modern Warfare MP5, same old monolithic integral suppressor. Key to note that over the regular monolithic. We've also got the 5 milliwatt laser and the Merc foregrip for better hip fire, the 45 round mags, and then also the collapsible stock just to boost that mobility up a bit more. Now, loadout number 4 is a very competitive one. We've got the Krig, we've got the PPSH. The Krig, especially here in Season 4, is a very, very reliable rifle, very competitive in pretty much every single aspect. And the PPSH is an absolute beast up close. So once again, you've got the range, you've got the CQB area covered with the PPSH. You're good on all grounds here, basically. A very fun loadout yet again, like I said, very reliable. So on the Krig, we're running the agency suppressor. You might be able to get away using the regular suppressor if you wanted to, but note you are going to be a bit less effective at some longer ranges. If you're shooting from, down in the corner of the map to sort of the central block area, your bullets aren't going to be as effective if you are using the regular suppressor over the agency. I've got the Ranger barrel on here. I don't feel like mil-spec is entirely necessary for this setup. You could try it though. It's obviously going to hurt your mobility some, but you are going to get some better range and control out of that. For me though, I feel like Ranger works just fine. I've also got the 60 round mag on there, the Serpent Rat for a better ADS time. You could also swap that out with a grip if you really needed it. Personally, I don't feel like the recoil is all that bad, or you could even go for the Raider stock instead, but I like the added ADS time of the Serpent. Then finally, I've got the 3 times yet again, primarily just because I don't like the Krig iron sights whatsoever. If you're comfortable with them, by all means, feel free to swap out for something else, but I feel like 3 times once again actually finds a pretty good place here on the Krig compared to other rifles where you don't always have to have an optic. And then for the PPSH, like I said, this thing is a beast up close. The TTK is phenomenal for those CQB fights. And here we've got the sound suppressor once again, the Task Force barrel, the Tiger Team Spotlight, the Raider stock, then also the 71 round drum. It doesn't really slow you down all that much, and you can squad wipe with this thing without even having to reload. It's absolutely fantastic and so satisfying when you do so. Again, same setup as like all the basic Cold War SMGs, but it's reliable, it works, and there's a reason that you're using all these attachments on pretty much every Cold War sub. And then finally, I've got sort of an experimental setup. I'm using the AK-47 as a primary with the Cold War MP5. Now, the Cold War MP5 makes complete sense as a secondary for Rebirth, and honestly, even for Verdansk as well. The AK-47 from Cold War, usually you're using as a close range rifle, especially on Verdansk. But on Rebirth, because you are in so many close range fights, I feel like you can use this as a primary and get away with it. However, we do build it a bit differently than normal. I actually opt for no suppressor here. You could use a suppressor and probably swap out the barrel because you're not going to miss out on all of that much, especially if you're trying to focus on close range fights. But for the sake of this being a primary, I don't want to necessarily use the GRU as a main suppressor because it is going to slow you down a bit. In the regular suppressor, you could use it, but you are going to have to remove an attachment elsewhere. You would gain that, of course, the seclusion off the minimap and the added ADS speed and whatnot. But I feel like the Liberator barrel, it's going to help out a lot here. You get that recoil control. You also get the velocity, so it's going to be effective in those medium range fights. You get the Tiger Team Spotlight on here, so you do keep some good mobility. You get the 45 round mag because, of course, that extra ammo is pretty much necessary. The Serpent Grip's going to add on some better ADS time, so you get that ADS speed back with the Serpent Wrap that you lose by not using the base suppressor. And if we use the Skeletal Stock, we get that better ADS strafe speed, we get the better firing move speed. It's going to help out with the mobility, and it just overall makes it a bit faster, a bit more aggressive, I would say, but you can still use this as like a medium range option. And honestly, if you wanted to try this as like a full-on primary, you wanted to use this in some more ranged fights, probably take off a Tiger Team, add on the 2 times or the 3 times, or even like a Microflex LED, honestly, and you can use this with some better clarity at some longer ranges. But trying out the AK-47 as a primary, I've honestly enjoyed quite a bit. It's been kind of fun, especially with a different setup like this that is still very effective, but not necessarily the same as what you're used to seeing. And then when it comes to the Cold War MP5, it is the same as we're used to seeing. We've got the sound suppressor, no barrel, because as always, we don't need it on the Cold War MP5. Tiger Team Spotlight, the 50-round drum, the Serpent Grip, and then also the Raider stock. So basically, you're just swapping out a barrel for the Serpent Grip here. You get some better mobility. The TTK up close is still phenomenal. All around, a super fun weapon to use and very, very effective. So yeah, between all these loadouts here, I've found a lot of success on Rebirth. I think you will too. Get used to the weapons, get those recoil patterns down, learn where they're going to be the most effective, and it's going to be a fun time. Of course, Rebirth plays a lot more hectic than Verdansk does. You got the constant respawn factor. You've got all the close range fights, which are a lot more common than on Verdansk. So these setups, I feel like, really thrive in those situations compared to normal Verdansk gameplay. That is going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on the video. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. Once again, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.